Hi, this is Krista at the Secret Yarnery. Today we are making African Flower Pentagons. To make your African Flower Pentagons, you just want to make sure you're using the same weight of yarn. It's a great stash busting project if you just want to use up your scraps, or you could use any yarn you like at all. If you'd like to follow along with a written pattern, it's available over on my website, secretyarnery.com. To make the African Flower Pentagon, you will need 3 colors of yarn plus whatever you're using for joining, and you can use just scraps or whatever colors you want to use for your pentagons. You will also need a crochet hook. I am using a 5.5 millimeter. You'll need a pair of scissors and also a darning needle to sew in your tails. So let's get started. Start by making a slip knot any which way you normally do. Shrink that down and pop it onto your hook and chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now we're going to work into the very first chain we made. So we don't count this knot. We count the stitch right on top. We want to go into the bottom part of that chain. So we get 2 strands of that first chain onto the top of our hook. So push your hook in. 2 strands of that stitch on the top of your hook. Work everything down so you have like a U shape underneath your hook, and hold your tail along your work. Slip stitch to form a ring. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3. That counts as our first double crochet, and I'm still holding the center of that ring open with my thumb and finger. Wrap your yarn and 1 double crochet into the middle of that ring. Now you can let go, because that stitch is now holding it open. And we're going to work over our tail, so just hold your tail along your work, around the outside of it. Chain 1, and 2 more double crochets into the ring. There's 1, and 2. Chain 1, and 2 more double crochets into the middle of that ring, into the middle of the circle. So there's 3 sets of double crochets so far. Chain 1, 2 more double crochets into the middle of that ring. Chain 1. So now we have 4. We want 5 for a pentagon. So wrap your yarn and 2 double crochets into the middle of that ring. And now just make sure we have 5 sets. However many pairs of double crochets is how many petals you're going to have. We want 5, so we want to make sure we have 5 pairs or 10 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's enough. Chain 1, and now we're going to slip stitch to the top of the chain 3 to join. So again, we want to go into the bottom part of that chain, so 2 strands on the top of our hook. Push your hook in, 2 strands on the top of your hook, and slip stitch with both strands to join. Chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. Pull your hook up and snug that down to secure. If you worked over your tail, you can cut off that center tail. So that one's finished. And we can sew in our first tail also. So thread that onto your needle. You can also use your crochet hook for this. And just work into these back loops, back and forth. Bring it through. You can snug this one down and then stretch it out. And now flip it over, and we're going to work our way back. So just in and out of these loops on the back of your work and pull that through. This time we do not want to pull it tight. We just want to let it rest and also stretch it out again after. We want to find find a new spot to join, so not where we worked in our tail on this half, so somewhere on the other side. So put your hook into any of these chain 1 spaces where we have not worked in our previous tail. Put your hook in, loop of yarn on your hook, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle. Bring it through and slip stitch with both strands to join. Drop your tail. You just hold it along your work for a stitch. And chain 2, 1 and 2. This counts as our first double crochet, but if you join your yarn in a different way, you will want to do a chain 3. Wrap your yarn and 1 more double crochet into the same space. Now drop your tail into the next space, 2 double crochets. So we're just jumping straight over. 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, chain 1, and 2 more double crochets into the same space. 1 and 2. Straight into the next space, 2 double crochets, 1, 2, chain 1, and 2 double crochets. 1 and 2. Into the next space, after the next pair of double crochets, make your 2 double crochets, a chain 1, and 2 more double crochets. 1 and 2. Into the next space, 2 double crochets, a chain 1, and 2 double crochets. Into the space where we joined, we have our chain and our double crochet, so that counts as 2 double crochets. So pop straight in and make your 2 double crochets, 1 and 2. And now to join, we're going to join with a single crochet. So into the top of that chain, just put your hook in. You want to make sure you get 2 strands of that chain on the top part of your hook. Put your hook in, bring your yarn back, and make 1 single crochet. So wrap your yarn and take off both loops. Hold that open with your finger and chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. Wrap your yarn and into that same space, 3 double crochets. There's 1, 2, and 3. Jump over into the next chain 1 space. So make sure you don't work on top of our first round. We're skipping these spaces on the top of our wheel, the center of our flower. We're just working into the chain 1 spaces in the middle, in the center of our last round. So jump straight over into the center of the next petal and do 7 double crochets. So there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now jump straight over into the center of the next pairs, or the center of the next petal, and 7 double crochets into the next space, the next chain 1 space. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So we're going to do that into each of our spaces in the middle of our petals. So we have 2 more to do. So do 7 double crochets into each of these spaces and I will meet you back. So it will look like this, and it is curved a little bit. It's a bit dishy. Don't worry about that. That is how it will be. Wrap your yarn, and now we're going to work into the same space that we started in. So we have our 4 double crochets, 3 real double crochets plus our chain 3 counts as a double crochet. So we need to make this 7 as well. So we're going to do 3 double crochets into the same space where we started. So wrap your yarn, jump over, and 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. And we're finished with this color now, so we're going to slip stitch to join. Slip stitch to the top of the chain. So put your hook into the bottom part of that chain. You want to get 2 strands of the chain on the top of your hook. So push your hook in, bring your yarn back, and slip stitch to join. Chain 1, cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down. We can work in this tail. You can use your crochet hook or a needle. So just work it into the back loops. We want to go forward. About that much. Pull it through. So snug that down and then stretch it out. Turn and work your way back. There we go, just like that. Stretch it again. I'm not going to cut that now. I'll cut that one later after I work into it again. And now we have a little tail here. It's a bit short. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to skip 1 strand and just work my tail back under. So I'm going to put my needle in first and then thread it. Bring it through. And now it's really short, so I'm going to use the blunt end of my needle, skip a strand of yarn to pin that down and push it all the way back the wrong way. There we go. I like to work my tails in 3 times, so I'm going to do the same thing. Thread my needle going all the way back, poke that tail in somehow, and bring it back the other way. That is the end of round 3. For round 4, we want to start at the beginning of one of our petals. So we're just going to find one of our petals and poke our hook straight in underneath the top of that very first double crochet, right at a valley. So pop your hook in, loop of new yarn on your hook, leaving a long enough tail to work with later. Bring that through and slip stitch with both strands to join. Drop your tail and just hold it along your work and chain 1. And now into each of the next 6 stitches, 1 single crochet into each. I'm going to drop that tail now and 1 single crochet into each stitch all the way along until we reach our valley. There should be 7 single crochets. There is our valley in between our petals, and just make sure you have 7 stitches. Wrap your yarn, and we're going to work down right on top of our first row, right on top of our beginning circle. So wrap your yarn and push your hook right down into that low space and make 1 double crochet. Now we're going to do 1 single crochet into each stitch. Just make sure you get into that very first stitch. We want to make sure we have 7. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Now this is our chain right here. So for the chain, I like to go in right before there's a little stitch. It's usually kind of hard to get your hook into this spot. So push your hook into that little stitch before and 1 single crochet. And now I'm going to jump over, and this is my next stitch way over here. So it looks like I am missing a stitch, but I'm not. Just make sure I've done 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's going to be 5, 6, and 7 before the valley. So we always want to make sure our stitch count stays accurate. So jump over 1 single crochet and 1 single crochet into each stitch until we reach our valley. Now just kind of open that up and make sure you have 7. And you can see that's nice and spaced out over top of that chain. It hides it nicely. Wrap your yarn and make one drop down double crochet right down here, right on top of our beginning circle to make our petal shape. There's our double crochet. And now one single crochet into each stitch of our next petal. Make sure you get into that very first stitch. And one single crochet into each stitch until you reach the next valley. Make sure you have 7. And one drop down double crochet right into that space above the first circle. 7 single crochets into the next petal, 1 into each stitch, making sure you get into that very first one. Wrap your yarn, and again, another drop down double crochet right on top of that circle that we started with. And 7 single crochets into the next petal, so 1 into each stitch, making sure you start in that very first stitch. When you get back to where you joined, 1 drop down double crochet. And now we're going to slip stitch to join. So we're going to slip stitch right into the middle of these legs, right here. So put your hook in, grab your yarn and bring it back, slip stitch to join, chain 1, cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to work with, pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. We've worked over our petal yarn, so we can cut off that tail. And these tails, because there's not too much color yet to hide them with, I leave those for now. I'll work in these after. If you are joining your African flowers with a join as you go technique, then leave them like this. You will be doing the next round as you're joining. So just make all of your flowers up to this stage. For the last round of your pentagon, grab your joining color of yarn or whatever color you want to use last. And we want to join in the top of one of our petals, so into the 4th stitch. So to find your stitches, just kind of roll that back and cover up your drop down double crochets with your fingernails or your thumbnails, and then you will see you have 7 stitches in between. So there's 1, 2, 3. Here is number 4, and you can count the other way also, 1, 2, 3. So on each side of that center stitch, there'll be 3 stitches. So we want to put our hook into the 4th stitch of any petal, it doesn't matter. Loop of new yarn on your hook, whatever color you're using for joining or for your last round. Bring it through and slip stitch with both strands to join. Drop your tail and chain 2. 1 and 2. If you join your yarn in a different way, do a chain 3. Hold your tail alongside your work for a couple stitches. Wrap your yarn. We're going to do 1 double crochet into each stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm at my chain here. So again, to hide my chain, I want to work into that little tiny stitch right before. It's kind of small and it's hard to get your hook into there, but that spot looks the best later. So really push your hook in. If it's hard, you could use a smaller size hook. So there's your double crochet. And now we're going to jump over. We've done our chain, so we've done the stitch for this whole area. Our next stitch is right over here. So wrap your yarn and 1 double crochet. And 1 more. We want to get into the 4th stitch again. So we have 1, 2, 3, here's 4. Into the 4th, that's going to be our corners. So corners get 1 double crochet, a chain 1, and 1 more double crochet. So I'm going to do 1 double crochet into each stitch until we get to the 4th stitch past our drop down or the tip of the next petal. So 1 double crochet into each stitch, 1. All the way along. To check where your 4th stitch is, you can just cover the double crochets with your thumbnail and then jump up 1, 2, 3, and that will show you your 4th stitch. So there's your 4th stitch, and that will be our corner. So 1 double crochet, chain 1, and 1 double crochet all into the same stitch. So now keep going, 1 double crochet into each stitch until you get into the 4th stitch of your next petal. Into the 4th stitch, so if you just cover up that double crochet, you'll count your 3 stitches. So into the 4th stitch, 1 double crochet, chain 1, and 1 double crochet. So it looks like that so far. Now keep going, 1 double crochet into each stitch until you get to the 4th stitch of the next petal. So 3 double crochets past that drop down. The next stitch is our 4th, so that'll be our corner. 1 double crochet, chain 1, and 1 double crochet into the same stitch. Now 1 double crochet into each stitch until you get to where we joined. When you get back to where we joined, that's going to be a corner. So into the same stitch, 1 double crochet, chain 1, and we're going to slip stitch to the top of that chain to join. Just going to push our hook in and slip stitch, making sure we have 2 strands of that chain on the top of our hook. So push your hook in and slip stitch to join. Chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. Now you can go back and sew in your tails and you're finished. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. So thanks so much for hooking along. I'd love to see yours. You can find me over on Instagram at Secret Yarnery, or join our Facebook group, the Secret Yarnery Crochet Community. I'd love to see how yours turned out and what you made with them. And thanks so much for hooking along. We'll see you in the next video, and stay hooked.